Welcome. This is Bukky Adejobi, the career coach at Code Chrysalis. We are here with Paul, who will be my co-host for this series, and we are excited to just start the series or start this conversation and see where it leads. So, Paul, if you could start us off by giving us a quick introduction of yourself, and we will get right into it.
Okay, yeah, I'm Paul Roberts. I'm a recruiter, a tech recruiter in Tokyo. My background is in the software industry in London in the 90s, and I came to Japan in 99 and started working in recruitment. Initially, just thinking I'd stay for a year. Famous last words is 24 plus years now. Currently, I work as an agency recruiter at an agency called Smart Partners. I also have a job board and blog at paulroberts.jp, and I do some consulting for startups on their kind of recruiting strategy and help them with day-to-day engineer recruiting, things like that too. So first, Bukky, perhaps you'd tell us a little bit about the series, what we'll be doing, and what we're hoping people can get out of it.
Hmm. Yes, thank you for the question, Paul. So, yeah, the series is really a conversation or a series of conversation with different people in the tech scene, with people from CTOs, CEOs, founders, and tech leads, and also HR professionals to really discuss midlife career changers, um, um, hiring software developers in the Japanese markets, looking at um, you know stories of people of companies that have hired these midlife professionals, the goods and the bad, the benefits and the challenges around hiring someone at that level, and really just hear firsthand experiences.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. And what kind of companies will we be speaking with?
I think right now the lineup is mostly startups, yeah, SMEs, mainly in Japan. I think we might have one company that's based in the States, but predominantly Japanese, foreign owned and Japanese owned um, companies in Japan within the tech space. And we also have, yeah, within the tech space, basically.
Okay, and
Yeah.
these are companies that have hired bootcamp grads or other mid-career changers in the past.
Yes. Yes, and because this is, being a Code Chrysalis career coach, we most of the people we speaking with are companies that have hired bootcamp graduates from Code Chrysalis. But I also do want to point out that, the companies we're interviewing are code people who have hired Code Chrysalis grads, but I believe the advantages or the benefits and challenges that we will talk about surrounding midlife career changers or bootcamp grads applies to any company that hires any bootcamp grads or self-taught midlife career changers because the
Mm.
core concept is still the same.
Yeah. The lessons are very transferable, so it's not narrowly limited to Code Chrysalis grads. So okay,
Yes,
yeah. From
yes,
from my point of
yeah.
view, I'm very interested to hear what our guests are going to be talking about. Um,
Hmm.
speaking as a recruiter, the tech market here, say in software engineering, many other areas, it's very sort of mid-career focused in terms of people with 5 to 10 years of experience, in software engineering, in design,
Hmm.
in product management. So I think companies are missing out a lot by not having a broader view of the market and looking at people with less experience, entry level, different backgrounds.
Hmm.
And I see companies that do it, that it works out very well for them. Companies that don't, and they're spending 12 months trying to fill a mid-level role where they could have brought someone
Hmm.
in, perhaps a more junior person in, and had them on board much more quickly, and the work is
Hmm.
getting done now. So I think if we can
Yeah.
kind of get some of the lessons that from the companies that make it easier for other companies to look at this as a viable
Hmm.
option for hiring, solve some of the problems or address the concerns they may have that may be putting them off this kind of hiring in
Hmm.
the first place. And also then having practical advice for the job hunters themselves. So those people
Mhm.
who are trying to get their kind of foot in the door to the market. So how can they
Hmm.
make themselves more attractive to get those interviews, whether that's in
Hmm.
terms of the interviewing skills itself, the resumes,
Mhm.
portfolios, what have you, how they're finding
Hmm.
the opportunities and engaging with the companies
Mhm.
in the first place. Anything like that, I
Mhm.
think that we can learn, that we can then kind of pass on to other people is going to be very valuable. So,
Hmm.
yeah, the hire market is very, very competitive. A lot of companies trying to hire the very same limited kind of skill set of people. Of course, it's
Mhm.
possible to bring over people from overseas, but that's
Hmm.
increasingly taking longer. Visa
Yeah.
processing taking up to 3 months now.
Mhm.
And people here already here with a life in Japan, if we're able
Yeah.
to get them into roles, that's
Hmm.
really kind of filling that need that's here currently, and work will get done. So I think it's
Hmm.
pretty
Definitely.
interesting to talk to these people and find out what we can learn from them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And a couple of points that came up as as you were sharing that, I'm going to walk backwards, but, talking about hiring from overseas, or hiring from within Japan versus hiring from overseas. And I think, a challenge that exists that I don't know how well this challenge is, looked at when hiring from overseas is, people in Japan already have experience living in Japan. And like you said, they have lives in Japan. So in terms of, the the possibility of them starting to work at a said company and then not like the life in Japan because maybe they had different expectations about living in Japan before coming to Japan. So if you're looking at someone coming from outside Japan, they might have expectations that are not met when they've arrived in Japan. So then you have someone who is getting who's having to deal with getting used to living in Japan, plus getting used to working at your company. So you're there. I feel like that's another challenge that I wonder, and I'd be curious to know how companies address that when they're hiring from overseas. Um, yeah, and then earlier you mentioned seeing how talking to companies and learning about the successes they've had hiring bootcamp
Mm,
graduates. And I think it would also be interesting to hear of the challenges, the not so successful
right.
cases, and what the situation or what the reasons beyond behind those. I don't want to say failures, but those mismatches have happened, and what companies that are looking to potentially hire, bootcamp grads, which is why we're here to encourage more companies to do that. They could take those experiences or those learnings, those experiences as learnings they can apply
Mm,
when
yeah,
exploring this option as well.
yeah. I think most people coming from overseas do settle in well. I think there's a lot
Mm,
more success stories than people who it doesn't work out for them and they go back
mm,
home.
mm,
But I think if you're looking at people already here, they have a life. They may well already have visas in place that
mm,
allow them just to transfer. They've got their bank accounts. They have somewhere to
mm.
live. They've got families often. So and they know what it's like to day to day. They're not their experience is a normal everyday life rather than perhaps visiting as a
Mm,
tourist or never having come
mm,
here in the first place. So
mm,
I work a lot to help people come over from overseas. I'm all for it, but also I think there are people here that are very
mm,
worthwhile getting into the tech industry who already here and already have lives here.
mm,
So
mm,
anything that can help expand that and kind of contribute to solving the labor shortages is a good thing. Um,
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And for you, I'm also curious because before we talked about starting the series, you started a project last year, which is actually how we got connected.
That's right.
Talking about different actually, maybe I'll let you talk about the project because I think
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think there are some things from that project that might be interesting, for the listeners to also hear.
yeah. Yeah, so maybe I'll give some of the background and then what we've been doing. So I think
Mm,
the background is basically probably around 2020 or so. I started getting contacted by bootcamp grads who were looking for
mm,
help. Can I help them find a job? Unfortunately, as an agent, not usually. Companies don't usually use an agent to find junior or entry level people. They want to do that
mm,
themselves as for cost effective or what have you. And so I didn't have roles to introduce to people, but I said, let's have a call. Let me understand how you're going about your job search, and let me give you some tips and see if we can get you
mm,
a sort of understand better how to look for a role. And throughout COVID, then I had a lot of calls, spoke to 20 to 30 people, put together a blog post guide, and I've
mm,
done some career coaching at the boot camps as well, to help people. Um,
mm,
so that's kind of working on one side, but what I haven't really seen is a kind of an increase in demand, especially after
mm,
borders reopened, and it
mm,
was companies were able to bring people back over again from overseas. So I wanted to look at what could be done on the sort of the demand side from companies themselves, and so just had the idea at Smart Partners as an agency that if we introduce someone who had less than 1 year's professional experience, we wouldn't charge a fee.
mm,
From our side, it's great for building relationships with people,
mm,
both on the client side and the engineer side, and it can overcome, for example, a cost barrier for companies
mm,
as well.
mm,
And so it's looked like a win-win. And I
mm,
really, I guess, sort of started looking at this probably last year, and
mm,
kind of slow going so far, to
mm,
be honest. I think I probably haven't spent enough time marketing the idea. I
mm,
certainly will be doing more of that this year. And
mm,
also, hopefully, this series will help to get the idea out to people as
mm,
well, that there are
mm,
talented people with skills that can be brought on
mm,
board. But yeah,
mm,
that's basically the sort of the idea that we had to kind of see if try it out, see if it can kind of help open the
mm,
market up a little bit. So
mm,
feedback from companies that I have spoken to has been very positive.
mm,
Good feedback from positive feedback from job hunters as well. But it's not like the floodgates have opened and companies have
yeah,
been beating down the door. But definitely some companies we've had good conversations with. So
right.
I think it's really a case like any initiative of just spending time working it, getting the message out, and
Mm,
as companies continue to struggle to find those 5-10 year experienced people, open up the opportunities for looking at different options.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, that was one of like I said, that was why we connected
Connected, yeah,
because yes, on LinkedIn. And it's a bit biased because, working as a career coach at a boot camp, you want your graduates to get jobs. But I thought, thinking of my past HR experience, I and also speaking with different hiring managers as well, for me, it felt like there really was a need to have this conversation.
mm,
Because even though I'm not working within a company as a tech recruiter or on the hiring team within a specific company, having conversations with some people in these spaces and also looking at the people who've actually been hired by CC who have actually hired CC graduates, for me it was like we really should be having these conversations because if we're not having these conversations, not many people know the benefits and maybe
yeah,
the disadvantages. And like a conversation I had with a hiring manager from a big company here in Japan, and we're talking about the onboarding process for bootcamp graduates versus um, new university graduates
mm,
for because it's more than just the technical aspect. Joining a company, there is more than just the technicality or technical
right,
skills. There's also the soft skills of being a professional. And with with not to say that new university graduates don't all have that. Some might from maybe previous like internships or previous part-time jobs before they graduated. But with a fresh graduate, there's a lot more work that needs to be done when onboarding them to a dev team versus hiring a boot camp graduates where you don't have to really worry as much about their communication skills or their stakeholder management skills or their project management skills. Maybe the only thing you need to worry about is getting them more familiar with the way your development team
Yeah,
works or with your code base, which most bootcamp which when most boot camps, or at least for Code Chrysalis, we teach the graduates to be um full stack or tech diagnostic. No, not diagnostic is the word I'm looking for.
agnostic, is it?
There we go. Thank you.
You're
Agnostic.
welcome.
Yes. And yeah, so I think it's important to shed more light on that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like anything. I think if people see the success stories, then it
Mm,
can spark an interest, which could lead to
mm,
opportunity. And again,
mm,
this is all about just increasing more opportunities for more people.
mm.
Hiring a bootcamp grad doesn't mean you don't need or wouldn't hire a university grad or
Right.
just a
Mm,
regular person with 10 years experience or what have you. But
definitely. Yeah.
it maybe gets some companies away from just a very, very narrow focus of we only hire these people with this
Mm,
kind of experience.
mm.
So I think the
Definitely.
success stories can enlighten potential
Mm,
hiring managers, HR people, and
mm,
what's possible.
mm, mm.
Also, not just looking at the successes, but the difficulties, the challenges
Yes. Yes.
allows both the job hunters and the companies to work on kind of addressing the challenges, finding
Mm,
ways to work around them. So again, I think
mm,
it's good to get things like this out in the open. And
mm,
then yeah, just I think the point you made about someone that if someone's had a successful year for 10 years in sales or marketing or something like that, they're probably not going to have to learn how to work with other people,
mm,
be professional, write emails and communicate, write
mm,
memos, um,
mm,
manage meetings, deal with
mm,
business users to understand requirements. So a lot of the soft skills and the other areas, the transferable skills they bring in with them, that
mm-hmm.
other entry level person might need to just obviously learn by experience. So
Yeah.
I think there can be a lot of advantages to getting someone that knows all of that and can probably just
Mm.
focus more on understanding the technology and the particular business problems the technology is solving.
Definitely. And I think, in addition to that, and this, doesn't mean it applies to all bootcamp grads, because I think it also depends on the person. But I
Right.
think, another thing, boot camps, or self-taught people, have that some might not is for a boot camp, for example, it is just so much stuff like compacted into 3 months or X number of months, or
Yeah.
for self-taught people, they have to manage their time. They have to be able to manage their time to study, to learn. So I think that grit is also something that comes with midlife career changers or bootcamp grads, and that can go a long way within a company, especially if it's a startup or a company that's in the middle of a transition to maybe to grow or a new project. um so I think, yeah, that would be that those are stories that I'm looking forward to hearing about. um Actually, one is as you were explaining, or as you were talking, two stories of graduates came to mind that I thought was interesting. Was We had a graduate who was a taxi driver, actually, before she came to the boot camp. And she was a taxi driver. She was studying, at CC, but she was also passionate about um, crypto
Okay.
and Bitcoin. And so she was learning that on her own, like playing around with Bitcoin on her own. And when she started job hunting, she actually ended up getting a job at a fintech company. And the main reason was because of that passion to pursue crypto cryptocurrency or trading on her own and actually be able to talk about it. And not um, that's not something that's necessarily tech related, but
Right.
that's something that is very related to being passionate about something enough to want to learn, to want to grow. And I think
Mm.
that's another thing um, bootcamp graduates or midlife career professional. And I keep saying bootcamp graduates because it's easier to say than midlife career career
Change
changers.
professionals.
Yeah, yeah. Or even self-taught people who are
Yeah.
changing careers at that point in their lives.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think motivation is incredibly important in hiring. So
Mm,
for someone to be willing to pivot from the career that they've established and probably been very successful in to do something different, I think that's really a big thing to see people with that kind of motivation. It's one thing that's really
mm,
impressed me speaking to bootcamp grads the last few years has been the level of commitment to learning, self-improvement, and the motivation. And I'd much rather hire a very
mm,
motivated person than
mm,
the most technically skilled, if that
mm,
motivated person is willing to learn. So I think, yeah, the levels of commitment, and you're not going to learn everything in 3 months or 6 months program. But,
mm,
when I left university, then it was just keep learning. It wasn't just I'm done now, I've got a degree, and now I
mm,
can just throw my hands up. It was continuous learning from there. If I look back at the
mm,
technologies I learned in college, we're learning to program in COBOL and Fortran and stuff like that. Yeah, we had Java and C++ and C and other things still used, but there's a lot of sort of legacy stuff in there. So you've
mm,
always got to be continually learning. So that
mm,
someone that's motivated to do that, and turning your back on a career that's got you where you are now to go off in a new direction, it's a big deal. It's not
mm,
a lightly taken step, I think, by anybody. So
mm,
I think that can well motivated people, big plus,
mm,
bringing into any company.
mm. Yeah, definitely. Um, just out of curiosity, we've been talking about the positive things, but I mean, you have experience. You've spoken with different bootcamp graduates, and actually, I'm not sure of this. Have you successfully placed a bootcamp graduate, or have you been
Not directly as an
unsuccessfully?
age, not directly as an
Okay.
agent. No, no,
Hmm.
no. So it's all my
Okay.
work with bootcamp grads has been sort of advisory and helping them find
Hmm.
jobs for themselves.
Hmm.
So I would say the when companies ask me to find people for them, the minimum levels of experience, typically 2+ years. Um, often it's again 5+ years. So I do
Hmm.
try wherever possible to bend the ear of whoever I'm dealing with and try and get them to look at a wider view.
Hmm.
But again, that can just come across as a recruiter trying to push, whoever
Hmm.
they happen to have.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it really takes a lot for companies to kind of be more open. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So it can be very
Okay.
difficult.
Yeah. Then what have you seen or heard of any stories from the people you've spoken with? What are some of the if there is one success story that comes to mind, or one failed story, quote unquote failed, or mismatch is probably a better word. So one success and one mismatched story that comes to mind if you have one. I'm just curious.
Um, I think in terms of success, maybe to be more general rather than a specific
Hmm.
person, I think
Hmm.
probably a lot of people I speak with when they're just starting out the job search, they're maybe sending off a couple of resumes on LinkedIn, waiting a week or two, see what comes back, sending off another couple, and they have a very very narrow kind of scope of kind of how they're job hunting.
Hmm.
So what I'm trying to teach people is to throw a much broader net in the way you approach. So whether that's it's great to apply for jobs on LinkedIn by all means, talk to agents if agents who do have more entry level roles when possible,
Hmm.
job boards and other things like that. Great, but also perhaps a more proactive networking approach of contacting, making relationships directly with the kind of people who are going to hire you, or people in the
Hmm.
teams where you can get hired. So whether that's networking events, meetups, looking at internships, looking at contract
mm,
roles.
mm,
A lot of people have it's kind of a narrow focus on the kind of companies they want to look at as well. So I often get,
mm,
I want to work at a unicorn B2C startup that's full remote from anywhere in
mm,
Japan. And it's like, well, that's nice, but the thing is, everybody wants that. So
mm,
you're throwing yourself into a bigger competition as well.
mm,
Whereas if you look at a broader range of companies from the start, you may end up with a company, joining a company you've never heard of. It could be a very
mm,
small SI company,
mm,
working on projects for external clients and things like that. So I think for success, it's been people who've taken a broader approach and been very
mm,
proactive. Um,
mm,
very basically, they've acted as their own recruiting agent and done all the
mm,
things a recruiter would do in terms of
mm,
chasing the opportunities down. So I think
mm,
that perhaps unsuccessful stories. Um,
mm,
I think generally most people seem to have it works out
mm,
and they are able to find the
right.
roles. I think
Mm,
I've probably spoken to a couple of people. It's taken them a very long time,
mm,
6 to 12 months to find a role for whatever reason, and that
mm,
can be difficult if you're obviously if you're not working. So how are you paying
mm,
for your life? Visa
mhm,
issues, other things like that,
mm,
um, and also sometimes people have joined and they didn't fit the company or the company didn't fit them, so
right,
they weren't
right.
able to um, meet the expectations, perhaps in terms
Mm,
of learning the role fast enough
mm, mm,
um, for whatever reason. And
mm,
generally, I think there's this place for everybody.
yeah,
So I never write anybody off. I think it's just a case of finding the right environment.
mm,
Um, Unfortunately, you often don't know the environment till you're there.
yeah,
So there's only so much you'll see in an interview process, or how much you'll learn. And
mm,
obviously, everyone wants to
mm,
put the best foot forward, the job
mm,
hunter, the hiring people.
mm,
So sometimes it just doesn't work out in terms of the environment and what you're
mm,
doing and how you're learning.
mm,
So
mm,
in that case, then people typically need to start looking for something new and find who's a
right.
better fit. I
Mm,
think perhaps people who've already had a career
mm,
um, are a little bit better at filtering companies or filtering
mm,
environments. They know what they
mhm,
like from their own
mm,
experience. So whether
mm,
it's the management style of the direct
mhm,
manager, whether it's
mm,
the sort of the general company culture,
mhm,
perhaps this when I was a new grad from university, it was just someone give me a job and we'll just pray for fingers crossed it all goes for the best.
that it works
So
out.
I had no idea about there were different what company culture would suit me or
Right.
things like that. And luckily for
Yeah.
me, my first company worked out very well. But I did an
Mm,
internship with them first, so I had 3 months.
right.
I tried them out, and they tried me out. So and that
Mm,
was I was
mm,
lucky in that respect.
mm,
So yeah, I think sort of successes has generally been finding a better way to find the roles, and
mm,
I think difficulties and challenges typically it's been the actual finding the positions and getting offers and finding the job,
mm,
and then perhaps that the environment not being as suitable
mm,
from this
mm,
for the person too. So
mm. What about from the company side, from the company's perspective? Right, because you'll be
um,
speaking with many companies through the series, and yeah, view from your interaction with different companies. Of course, not giving any
mm,
names or not, I know, just general from a general perspective.
I think some of the lessons or some of the things I've seen have probably been um, how well the new joiner could align to the manager's expectations of getting up to speed
Mm,
in the environment and
mm,
learning as an engineer. So I think I've seen cases where it's been fantastic. The hiring manager has been very pleased that the person's learned at the pace they wanted them to learn and
mm,
at the scope of things that the tasks and work that they wanted to give them, they've been able to kind of rise to the challenge. Where I've seen
mm,
probably difficulties, it's been cases where the hiring managers felt the person isn't getting up to speed as they should
mm,
be.
mm,
And most hiring managers, most engineering leads or CTOs, there's very sort of roadmaps of what needs to get done, deadlines from
mm,
the business, and having someone that's not getting up to speed. as you'd
mm,
expect, then tends to be the sort of the biggest problem.
mm,
So I don't really think I've really heard probably issues of people failing to adapt on the soft skills side of things.
mm,
So it's probably a little bit more on in terms of the getting up to speed on the technical side of things.
Okay. Yeah, it would be yeah, it would be interesting. I mean, if you have any insights on this, that would be great to hear. But it would be interesting to hear how some of these companies that we speak with, how they've um created in a way an onboarding system, or how they've ensured or helped their new recruits
To be
get up to
successful.
speed, or
Yeah,
yes, or stay up to speed. Because I think the success of a developer or any employee within a company, it's two way. It's a two
yeah,
parts. It's the
absolutely.
employee definitely, but also there are things potentially that the company can do. Some cases there's absolutely nothing that can be done, but it
Right.
would be, and yeah, in like
Yeah,
in cases where it's been effectively done, curious what are things that companies could do, and also new recruits could do.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, for companies, they've got to have an environment and onboarding process that leads to success. So it's got to be, I think, thought through rather than. I don't think you can just give the same approach to somebody that's coming in as a senior engineer, and
Mm.
who you're probably going to expect to pick up more on their own. Um,
Mhm.
Looking at the code base and documentation and things like that. Whereas I think you bring someone more entry level in, they're going to need a bit more guidance. They probably haven't seen the systems of the size and scope of what you're working on. It can be quite intimidating,
Mm.
I think, when I talk to someone that's gone in and it's like, wow, I've been doing some portfolio projects and now I go and see this, massive e-commerce system in front of me. So I think companies need
Yeah.
to build the paths, put the rails in place for people to be successful. So I'm interested
Mm.
to hear of the companies that thought things through and done
Mm.
that, or maybe didn't think things through. What would they do if doing it again? If they could back from the
Yeah.
start, what would they do differently? And I think
Mm.
from the new joiner point of view, probably I think a lot of it's going to come down to understanding that you're going to be continually pushed to learn.
Mm.
It's not kind of like I've got the job now, so feet up.
Mm.
It's really just starting now, and you've got to take
Yeah.
the skills you learned at boot camp or you've been teaching
Mm.
yourself. Um, but that's likely to be the tip of the iceberg about what's going to be necessary as an experienced professional engineer. So
Mm.
I think it'd be interesting, perhaps, of how some uh, new joiners have put in place their own, whether it's self-study or working
Mhm.
with a senpai or
Mm.
special, is it been coaching with their team lead or what have you,
Mhm.
uh,
Mm.
to kind of take some ownership from their side as well of their own kind of
Mm.
development too.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And also mentorship, yeah, with the senpai. Potentially also like presenting, like if you as a newly onboarded person realize they don't have there isn't a proper plan in place for me,
Right.
make one and then present that to your to your hiring manager or your team leader. Say, what do you think? Do you think I should add more to it? And work with them, because that shows initiative. And
Hmm.
I think that that goes a long way, not only as a new employee, but also as you grow within the organization.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my experience is all in sort of the English speaking tech world in Japan.
Mm.
At the moment, I think there's a fantastic tech community that's grown in the last
Mhm.
sort of 5 to 8 years.
Mm.
Some very active people who came in perhaps just before COVID, and others who joined after COVID as well.
Mhm.
So I think there's an opportunity for people to get mentors and senpais, again, not necessarily from the company, but just in the
Mm.
community. There's a lot of people, I think, very willing to help people,
Definitely.
and they've got the lessons. Maybe more experienced people have the lessons from their own careers, and they can
Mhm.
add in some help on how people can get up to board. So I don't think it's something.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be something people have to feel they got to struggle with alone. Um,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people. The company should build the support in, but say they haven't
Mm.
or it's not working, then I think there are people outside of that environment also who'd be very happy to help
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
to kind of resolve things and just give
Yeah.
their own experience. Maybe again, maybe someone outside of that company would just think
Mm.
this it's not the right environment for the person to be in
Mm.
terms of the company
Mm.
cultural things, and give
Yeah.
that perspective as an outsider. But I
Mm-hmm.
think, yeah, I don't think there's any need for people to kind of struggle on it alone, when
Definitely.
there's
Yeah.
so many very, very helpful people in the community at the moment.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. And it's just ask. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just ask. There are many platforms. The many communities, like you said, on Slack, on Discord, on LinkedIn.
yeah,
Um, just type it on Google, and many things will come up. Mm.
yeah, yeah. And the vast majority of people I think are very, very helpful, very open, very willing
Mm-hmm.
to lend a hand.
Mm.
I'm very impressed by the sort of the basically just the good people out there in the
Yeah.
community. So I think there should be opportunities for help.
Yeah, I am not a developer, and I've had success reaching out to many developers and hiring managers, and I think the tech community in Tokyo is very open.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But I mean, I'm looking forward to the next series. Any last words? Anything you want to share for people to look out for the next series, for the next episode of the series, or
I would say, we're not professional podcast hosts by any means, as people have probably gathered from watching this.
right?
So this is our sort of first effort at this. So I'd be interested to hear, from whoever's looking at the episodes on,
Hmm.
what should we be asking? What are they interested to hear? For
Hmm.
people, if it's a self-taught engineer or designer or product manager or entry level
Hmm.
people, what are they interested to learn? What can we ask?
Hmm.
What information can we gather and maybe
Hmm.
synthesize for them? And also
Yeah.
from companies, what are they interested to hear that's worked? What
Yeah.
pitfalls have other companies avoided, as well? So I think probably just ask people have some patience with us in our early presentation style. We'll get better as we get more comfortable, but I think, yeah, no, give us feedback,
Okay. Hmm.
and let us know, what sort of things should we be. We've got this opportunity to talk to some very interesting people. Looking at the guest
Yeah.
list,
Hmm.
there's some very interesting people, great companies,
Hmm.
and let us know what we should be asking and how can we
Yeah.
help. And that will, as episode by episode, I think we should be sort of getting better at what we're doing and adding a bit more value to people too.
Yes, yes, definitely. And to add to that from the company's side of things, I know it seems like we're mostly focused on tech, but the hiring process involves many departments. So if you're in HR and you have some feedback, I think we'll also speak with one or two HR professionals, talking about the cost aspect, and also the hiring timeline aspect of it. So if you have some questions or feedback, please feel free to add it in the comment below when this is
Absolutely,
posted.
absolutely. But yeah, I think also, yeah, we are focused on the tech space, but I think a lot of what we're talking about is very transferable to people changing jobs in different fields.
Hmm.
And I don't think anyone's expecting a job for life in just one field continuously these days. So I think
Mm-hmm.
looking ahead, it's very likely people will have multiple careers in their lifetime.
Hmm.
So I think a career pivot is probably going to become more likely for many
Hmm.
people in the future. So I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what we're going to understand is going to help people pivoting in different areas as well, not
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
software engineers or other people within tech, but people outside of that
Hmm.
too, who are looking to do
Hmm.
similar career changes, as well. I think a lot of what's going on is basically just people and dealing with people,
Yes.
and the processes and things that people create. So I
Hmm.
think, as a result of that, I think very transferable to other areas too. So hopefully there's something for people in other areas who are considering pivots and hiring people with different backgrounds
Hmm.
into their roles in future.
Yeah. And that is it for today. We will see you in the next episode um, of this series. We don't have a name for the series, but we will see you in the next episode. Thank you and stay tuned.